Yes, welcome to the Vanguard Show special. We have a very special guest today, Brother Opio Lumumba Sokoni. Brother Opio is a true Renaissance man embodying a remarkable blend of talents, achievements. As the owner of the international online show, Resource Scholars Show, he showcases diverse voices, topics, and additionally, he manages the Florida Star newspaper. And I've been following this brother for a long time. He's authored a number of books, including I Want to Be a Lawyer When I Grow Up, Controlling Blue, Race, Media, and Policy, and also Bessie Coleman, Flying the Blues. Brother Opio is definitely a unique blend of activism, education, creativity, making a compelling voice in today's landscapes, and his work definitely deserves to be seen. And it's my honor to bring him to the stage. Me and this brother have been following each other a long time on social media, and when he do his C-SPAN interviews. But I'll add him to the stage, and we're going to welcome him to the show. Brother, how are you?
I'm doing great, brother. Do I have my camera right, or do I need to situate my camera a different way?
Oh, okay, yeah, you kind of on the side a little bit.
Okay, what if I did that?
There we go. Oh, there we go. We're right on right there, brother.
Okay.
Yeah, brother. Well, look here, man. I'm honored to have you on the show, brother. It's been a long time coming. And, brother, I appreciate you reaching out to me and having me on your show in Jacksonville when I had the first edition of my book. So, again, I'm honored by your presence, brother. I really appreciate you.
Oh, the honor is all over this way. Man, thank you for all the work that you've done. And I don't have to talk about how incredible the Panthers were. I don't have to talk about the important work that you're doing to keep the information out there. I really appreciate you, brother Ismail.
Oh, likewise, brother. And again, I want to kind of lead off by you. You're not in Jacksonville anymore. You're in. Are you in Dayton, Ohio? You said.
I'm in Toledo. I've always traveled around a whole lot. I've always lived away from Jacksonville, Florida, Duval County, my hometown. I've always lived in different places. But yeah, I live in Toledo, Ohio right now for the last couple of years.
Okay. Well, I thought for some reason I thought you said Dayton, Ohio, and I was remember I say that's the funk capital because Ohio players Zapp with Roger Troutman, Steve Ayrton, Slave, Lakeside. They it's the funk city right there, brother. But I definitely had that confused for a second.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Ohio is an incredible state. And if you take the H and turn it into a P, it'd be Opio.
Oh, there
I
you go.
that.
It was meant to be.
Autocorrect turns my name into Ohio.
Right on, brother. Good point, there. Good point.
Yes,
Well, brother, let's talk about about what motivated you on your journey. First, coming up, where you grew up, your family life, and then your journey in academia, civil rights, media, and then history, as well as those branches of discipline that you took on.
Sure. Thank you. I'm from Jacksonville, Florida, raised in Atlantic Beach, which is one of the beaches out there. Long time ago, about 100 years ago, that was the Black Beach. It was called Manhattan Beach at the time. I got a book coming out hopefully next year that talks about some incredible history, hidden history that we don't know.
Okay.
But two of my grandfathers were pastors. One of my grandfathers basically owned or created a lot of work for people in this place called Cosmo, which is right inside of Jacksonville, Florida, in the Arlington area. The enslaved people were armed over there. This is where you're going to get your Gullah Geechee and so on. I raised there, and I got to see in Duval County the underbelly of street life as a teenager growing up. Thank goodness I had an incredible education in the background with grandparents that were builders and cared about the community, cared more about the community than money. And so I, one day out of high school, in 1988, I was one of those guys that saw some really horrible things that was going on as a result of the beginning of the crack cocaine epidemic. I'm so glad I left right during the time I did. I wanted to stay another summer, but right, I had a buddy of mine whose father also worked in concrete. Our fathers worked in concrete. He was in a delayed entry program to go into the Navy. And I had lived in Atlantic Beach, where the Navy is right there. And you see a lot of the young guys, you know, they have cars that were in the Navy. They would come and get the girls that were local, you know, and they would come to the clubs that were there, and some of them they would have to fight. And so we ended up seeing that. And a buddy of mine, I ended up leaving this white school called Fletcher High School and going to the black school called Jackson High School, because there was just so many sisters and brothers there. And ultimately, I got into the delayed entry program in the Navy. And I'm so glad I did that, because one day out of high school, I left. Just before I left, I saw some murders that happened. There were people that were outside that were never outside before. People on drugs that you would just not believe. I was seeing that the last year of high school. And so one day out of high school, I was gone. I left. I went to California. They had me in the Navy in Cali, where I did boot camp in San Diego. Love San Diego. Then my first station was Guam. I went to Guam. And let me tell you, I was a young brother with a gold tooth in my mouth and didn't care about nothing. I got in a lot of trouble my first year because of how ignorant I was. I was so ignorant, but that's where I ended up finding these brothers. There are brothers in the Navy that hate the Navy. They hate the military, right? They're there to get the GI Bill. They got to do what. And so you get to run into these brothers, and this is how you get information passed. This is how you end up getting the back then they had Farrakhan speeches on cassette tapes. Malcolm X speeches were on cassette tapes. And so after that first duty station, I ended up going to a C school where you do prosthetics. 'Cause I went in the Navy as a dental tech. And then I went and got another school, which is a C school, where I did prosthetics, and that was oral, where you get to make prosthetic, gold teeth, false teeth, crown and bridge, and so on. Well, that's how I ended up making a lot of money under the table in the Navy. A lot of the guys that were on that ship. I was on the USS Abraham Lincoln, which was kind of a floating city. I was in Oakland at the time. I left Guam, came back to the United States, and I was in C school, which is back again in San Diego. But then after that duty station, I went to a ship, and that ship was in Alameda, California. And you can imagine what that did for my life. Oakland, California. I will never forget Oakland, California, for what they did to me and for me. But at the same time, I was doing C school. I was down in LA with a bunch of buddies of ours. Just imagine some 21-year-olds just having a good time. We was on this show called Party Machine. It came on like midnight. It came on after the Arsenio Hall show. So if you look at some of the old tapes, you'll see some of my buddies and I, everybody's trying to get discovered. We was just there partying and having a good time. They would do 3 shows a day, feed you. We got to run into Easy E, hang out with him. We got to run into this was during the New Jack City days, right?
Okay, right.
And so Michelle A came and performed, and we got to see all of them. And then
do we have any footage of you, brother? Do we have any footage that I can put?
It's a footage of me with a green trench coat with no shirt on, dancing with Nia Peoples. It's so embarrassing. Some of the things that we did was so embarrassing before consciousness. And so right after that summer, I was given a book, the autobiography of Malcolm X. It's like somebody hit me in the head with a brick. Because in the South, we learn a lot about King, and what we learn about King, they dumb down so much, and they make him look weak. They don't make him look like this revolutionary that he was. And so when you read Malcolm X and you see him using all these simple words for complex thoughts, and you saw the power of reading and power of knowledge, changed my life forever. My buddy always say, "Man, I saw Opio. My name was Shannon at the time, Shannon Jackson.
All right.
I saw Jackson at the time. He was at the airport. They gave him this book. They gave me 2 books. It was Autobiography of Malcolm X and Secret Societies Unmasked.
Oh wow,
And
yes,
later,
yes.
right, and later on, I got the Dr. Tony, Dr.
Browder.
Tony, what is that? Who?
Is it Tony
Uh,
Browder?
no, he did the book on Marcus Garvey.
Oh,
Dr. Tony, Dr. I forget what his name. And
yeah,
then
me too.
I got
Yeah.
Chancellor Williams' Destruction of Black Civilization. After
Right.
that book,
Mhm.
I would
Tony Martin.
Tony Martin, Dr. Tony Martin, yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah. Mhm.
After reading Chancellor Williams' book, Tony Martin's book, Malcolm X book made me a lover of knowledge. Dr. Tony Martin's book made me an activist because of because of Marcus Garvey wasn't just talking; he was actually doing stuff. He made me an activist.
Right.
It was Dr. Chancellor Williams' book, The Destruction of Black Civilization, that kind of gave me almost a nutshell on history and made me want to read more. And then from there, it was just reading and reading. Now you gotta let me just say this. When I was in the Navy, one of the most embarrassing moments of my life was going in front of the entire command where they would do we would talk about what we're going to be doing during the day, make sure everybody's there. It's called muster, right?
Okay.
And they called me out front, and a buddy of mine, I'm not going to say his name because all I'm going to do is laugh at him when I tell him that I said his name on here, but I'm not going to say his name. But we were the two E1s, and they were sending us to a basic functional skills course. This is my first duty station, first year. Basically saying, you guys are dumb, you guys don't know how to read, you guys don't know how to write in front of everybody, so we're going to send you to this course. I will never forget that. Also in the Navy, you had enlisted. They were blue and they worked their butts off and made a little bit of money. The officers during that time, this is 88, 90, 91, 92, the officers were almost all white. And they were the ones that had the education as a result, and they were the officers, and you have to salute them. No matter what they say to you, you can be the highest enlisted E9, the lowest officer O1 can tell you what to do. You have to salute him. I didn't like that. But it also made me understand the importance of education and power. And it was just redoing in my mind everything Malcolm X, just so simply stated. And so once I did that, I knew I was going to get out in the Navy. I became highly politicized, but I was still ignorant, highly politicized. And from there, just happy that I was in Oakland at the time, because you would go to the club and a brother in Oakland, they will pull your coat on something. Hey, brother, you could do this in business, you could do that. And Oakland was like that. Oakland was one of those places, man, that now you can get hurt in Oakland if you're doing the wrong thing. But if you're doing the right thing, you can get a lot of help in Oakland. And so I always remember how incredible Oakland was. And I would go down to California. I would go down to Southern California almost every weekend because I had a daughter named Nzinga down there at the time. Her mother was in the military, was one of my supervisors, as a matter of fact, when I was my first duty station was in the military down there. And my mother was living in LA, and still lives in LA. She goes to that church, First AME Church with Pastor Murray, who has been a mentor. Yes, sir.
Cecil Chip Murray, matter of fact.
The man. A Floridian. And he was one of my mentors. So when I left, I decided right there when I was in the Navy that I was going to go to college. I was going to go get an education. One of the debates I was having with an officer, and I was angry and I was raging. Imagine being a rated autobiography of Malcolm X, going to get out, debating everybody in there. I was one of the brothers that hated the Navy that was in there.
Yeah. They call you troublemaker.
I became one of them, right? So one of the doctors I was debating with, and I was debating, and he said, "So what degree do you have? What degree? What kind of research did you do on it?" And he was right. He was right, man. And nobody ever had to say that to me again. man, I started taking college courses right then because the Navy would pay for like 75% of tuition, and then they would do another 25% with assistance if you're actually active duty. So my education was free while I was in. We was out to sea. I would take psychology class, sociology class. They would have people from the University of Maryland and Texas come on to the ship, or they had Chapman University out in town, and in the Bay Area, and I would be going out in town and I would be doing that work, and I wouldn't care what nobody say about me getting that education because I knew what it was. And so when I got out of the Navy, 94, I lived in Atlanta for a year. That was the year that Freaknik was nuts. Yeah, but I was a single parent at the time. Thank goodness I was a single parent at the time with a finger. And
focus. We got you focused, brother. You focused.
Not all the way, because I had a whole bunch of cousins that lived there too. I do not want to see. Let me just say, I had buddies of mine because I was out in the Navy at the time, and a lot of my buddies were out too. And I lived in Atlanta because of buddies of mine say, "Hey, should we move to Atlanta because the Olympics are going to be there, right?" And so they got jobs, and so I got thousands of dollars in my pocket because I made gold teeth for brothers on the ship, under the table. And in the midnight, I was making gold teeth, helping people out. I would have, you bring me your ring, you bring me your this and that. I would melt it down. I kid you not, this is 2 and 3 in the morning. And I was making money just so I can get out of the Navy, because if you got money and you making a regular check there wasn't a lot. And then you get out, they make you scared to get out. They make you afraid to get out. I'm like, hey, no way I'm staying there, because I become politicized. Right. And so right after that, in the Navy, I was still reading and still trying to break my ignorance, and it was hard to do in Atlanta, but thank goodness I was a single parent at the time, and I wasn't taking any courses. And so I was keeping our child, and her mother was in Iceland, in Keflavik. And so when she came back, she went to Bethesda area, where Norfolk and not Bethesda. She went to Norfolk, some kind of Norfolk area, and I thought, you know what? Let me go up there, university. But let me do that. When I took the up there, baby mother, we ended up never getting married, but we were together for like 10, 11 years. So we stayed together there, and I went to the Hampton, and I thought I was going to go there. Okay. And I went to a few schools there, and I was ODU, and then there was Norfolk State University. At Norfolk State University, the sisters jumped out of the office what was that? The for veterans. They jumped out of the office and were just helping me out, doing this for me, got my check money for me. This is the class, these are things you have to do. They got all my credits, but I didn't have to do 4 years because remember, I was already taking college courses, and all my electives, the Navy, they put all that together, and so I only had to do 3 years. Oh, wow. And so while I was at Norfolk State, I didn't even know there was a Black college named Norfolk State. One of the best experiences of my life was Norfolk State University. What they did at that university just created such a great foundation in myself. They made me feel like I wasn't crazy. They made me love that I was Black, and I wasn't. It's not radical to love Black people. It's not crazy to love Black people. And as a matter of fact, if you want to do a whole lot more, you can do it right here. So I was doing stuff out in town, and we ended up being on TV in Norfolk State. We were going after police officers for the first time. That was, my mentality was the thing that I wanted to go after most was crooked cops. I wanted to figure out any of those entities that everybody was afraid of. That's what I wanted to go after. And so the FBI was also on my list. Also the CIA, they're all on my list. Anything that the IRS, all of them, they're on my list. As a youngster, that I would go get all this education, find all these different people, create these different organizations, and connect with various organizations, and we would go fight the giants. Wow. Right on. Wanting to save the world. How crazy are you? Wanting to save the world.
Hearing theory and practice.
When I was a lot younger.
Oh, no, I was just saying you're carrying theory into practice, because we study so much, but it's the application that's important, right?
Marcus Garvey. That
That's
was
right.
that Marcus Garvey book I read that made me say, let's do it. Let's not talk about it. Let's do it. And then you can't read too much without reading about the Panthers, about the Black Panthers. And you want to talk about doing it. They were doing it, right? And left this incredible legacy. And so at Norfolk State, we end up taking over the student government. I pulled together some people that wanted to run, and we all got together and we took over the student government there, and we ran the student government that year. One of the years I was there, I think that was 96, 90, or 97, 98. 97, 98, we ran the student government, changed the Constitution. We were very pro-Black in our efforts, and just some awesome things. I end up becoming the president of the pre-law club, the Thurgood Marshall pre-law club there. And I used to, when we ran the student government, we didn't run the newspaper, but I would sneak articles. Back then, you had to write out articles. And I would write them out, and I would sneak them under the door early in the morning or late at night. And I would write them in a girl's name. I would write about all the things that we were doing.
Right.
And I would put a girl's name on it, and then I would put it under the door. And I would put it like I wasn't even in the student government. That student government we have now, they changed the Constitution. They made Black people do this, and they stopped the fighting between the administration doing this, and they, I would they all that.
Wow, that's a lot.
And so, and this some you realize you have to do this because students got other things going on, and there are factors in there. And then you have the Greeks, and none of our top people, for the first time, probably a long time, none of them were Greeks, that ran it. These are the pro-Black sisters that were running Norfolk State, and the brothers, that want to go to law school, and that's in politics. This is who are now running. And so our whole thing was, this is not about popularity. This is about leadership, right? And so we did some awesome things there. And I can remember we would go to all the law schools, and I remember going to Howard Law School and just feeling like I was at home, just to visit, feeling like I was at home, because we went to Duke, we went to North Carolina Central, we went to a number of different law schools, and boy, Duke was awesome. This guy named Alfonso Sally just took us in, and just we slept in their beds and everything. They just look out for the pre-law club because we're all Black, and it had to be like 30 of us. And then North Carolina Central, I was heavily impressed with them. I mean, when we were asleep, them brothers were up 3 and 4 in the morning reading and going back and forth,
debating.
North Carolina Central was something incredible. Howard University, oh man.
Yeah, as my friend Mark Hayes would say, HU.
yeah, the real HU, mind you. But Howard University is something special because it comes with its own charisma. You already know the history when you get there. When I got accepted into that school, my grandmother cried. She didn't know about no other school. She knew about Howard University. My grandmother cried in that one. They were all looking at me when I first went to college like, wow, you remember him when he was a kid? You remember how crazy he was? They were kind of, people back at home kind of looked at me like that for a little while, at the beginning years because of what I was as a youngster. So at Howard University, oh man, this is when you learn about Mumia Abu-Jamal and go to Philly. I did my independent study on the counterintelligence program of the FBI, and I still believe that brothers and sisters who are still living today need to come together and create a class action lawsuit because of what happened to them. I saw some things inside the Senate Church report. There was a senator named Church. He did a report in the 70s about what happened. Go read that. And what our government did to us, and to not only just the Panthers, but to a lot of those leftist organizations, the American Indian movement, and so on. The wonderful thing about the Panthers are forever because of something very important they did. They stressed education in fighting.
That's right.
And they also talk more about oppression because anybody can fall into that. But we're going to deal with Black folks because it's a special situation that's happening here. They will live forever as a result of how they put everything together. Right. And so at Howard University, I became the the editor of the law school newspaper because I had said some radical things before in my first year, and it caused some problems for me with some of the students,
Right.
and because I was talking about them.
Okay.
And there was a professor that quoted one of my articles, and she had this. She was like the pro-black teacher. That if all the pro-black stuff, this is the teacher everybody talked about, and her name is Dr. Nikiti Taifa is her name, and so she quoted me in her newsletter, and then all the problems stopped for me. All the anger at me stopped because of what she did. And then the guy who was running the paper, he had went to Norfolk State as well some years before. I didn't know him at the time. Named Adrian Howe. He said, "Hey man, why don't you come work on the paper with us?" And then that worked on the paper with him. I'm talking about a law student your first year.
Wow.
All night. I can't do this. I'm going to fail out. One of my professors would say it like this. There are some of you sitting in this class, you make it possible for the people to be at the top of the class.
Okay.
He was talking about
kind of a backhanded compliment, right?
Listen to me. I got friends of mine that went to law school. They know everything. They can do it. Day one. Me, I'm all night reading. I didn't go to no camps for law school. I didn't go to no some of this and some of that, growing up, and the magnet school for law, and my parents were not lawyers or none of that. And so those of us who did that, you got to come in and you got to fight it out, and you studying all night. You will never ever, let me tell you something about your first law school. You will never ever complete all of the readings, all of your assignments for the night. That's the first time in my life where I'm like, you can't get it done. And so that's why it's important to have groups and other people. Okay, you read that. Now, if you don't know that, you're just going to have to there's some students that were able to do it alone. Right. I couldn't. I couldn't. And I realized the talent. And Howard was like the all-star team of incredible brothers and sisters just coming together, and getting a law school education. That's kind of how I looked at it. That next year, I ran the law school newspaper. We sent papers to all the political prisoners. They had a Jericho movement. We sent to all the political prisoners. Anything the Black Panthers did, I wrote about it. I educated people all the things that they were a part of that the government stole and started doing it in the community. Just a lot of different things. My Nikita Taifa came to me and said, "Hey, they looking for an externship, somebody to do an extern. It's like an internship, but it's an extern at the Trans-Africa Forum." Okay. Because that Randall first Robinson. Year, Randall Robinson, Dr. Randall Robinson, incredible brother. So, but that first year, I did 2 internships. One with a guy by the name of Talib Kareem. He had his own law firm, an incredible brother. He had a sister that was in my class and another brother that went there. They was a Howard family, right? They went to the undergrad there, right? And so Nikita came to my second internship was a national conference of Black lawyers. This was the lawyers that did all of the radical stuff, all the radical cases nobody wanted to deal with. National Conference of Black Lawyers. There was another attorney group that was doing it as well. But the National Conference of Black Lawyers, they had like 300 boxes, right? Just big old boxes that just materials in there since the 60s, right? Wow. That every year they tried to get somebody to go through those boxes and they'll go through them. They say people only last one day. Right. When I went to the Spingarn Library, I'm a law student first year, and I saw the boxes were literally stacked to the ceiling. Wow. But they told me what was in there was just a whole bunch of information about the things that they've done, their programs, from each one of their annual conferences, letters. And so, man, I couldn't wait. Okay. And so I ultimately finished all of those boxes, went through all of them, document everything in them. And I saw some awesome things. I saw some letters that were by Randall Robinson before I even met him, fighting, on dealing with the issue of apartheid. I saw a letter of Afeni Shakur. She was doing what the Panthers had her up at the at Berkeley College, I believe. And this was 1971. She was pregnant at the time with Tupac. right?
Yes.
At the time, this is what the letter was, I forget what the letter was, but, or the program was, but I remember it was like April or something like that, 71. And I'm like, wow, she's pregnant with Tupac at this time. Cause Tupac is what, June 16th, 71. All right.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got a lot of little stuff out of those boxes like that, but so much more knowledge and a lot of confidence in knowing that, man, there are some incredible Black lawyers out here that are doing some awesome things. My last year there, I remember being asked to go out to Atlanta. I think that was Atlanta, where the Panthers have like these professionals. They come together and they bring these kids out and they separate them into these groups. And you're basically out in the wilderness at a camp type place, and you spend the night and you do some incredible things out there. And so I was over.
Was that the place that you ran into one of my mentors, Ronald Freeman, Southern California chapter? And I think you guys were called the Apakas.
No, I think I ran into him I did a film in Oakland, and he was at the filming for some reason. And I remember who he was, because of the history, right? I think that's how I saw him. I think that was in Oakland at one of my films.
Okay.
But this one, so they got the Simbas, they got the Pakas, they got I forget what, and then they got the Panther Cubs, right? And so I was over the Pakas. And so at the end, we do a big old war game. And, I told the Pakas, I said, okay, this is what you're going to do. I said, everybody that you see, you're going to go in a group, you're going to run at them and throw, it was like that. And the Pakas, my little group was the reason that, we ended up winning. I won't say my little group, but we ended up winning the game because of the Pakas. They said the Pakas were crazy. They would all go run at the same time. You couldn't get away from them. So they would hit you and then you were out of the game. And so that was just incredible stuff. But a part of that was education, and fun. But that was my last year long.
I did want to say, you brought up Howard University. I don't know if you know this, but Kwame Ture, aka Stoker Carpiker, was my first living mentor. I met him on the continent of Africa, and then I was in Ghana, Accra, Ghana, and he came over from Guinea, and then he would hook up with me when he'd come to California, and brother, he told me that, brother, you have a lot of knowledge, but if you're not a part of any organization, then really, brother, you're doing a disservice to your people, and that's when I got committed. So just to let you know. He was my first living mentor. The autobiography of Malcolm X was the one that changed my life as it did you. So we're talking in the same vein, brother.
Same language, yes, sir. Yeah. I got a buddy of mine named Jonathan Hutto. Boy, you get him. If you talk to him for 10 minutes, he's going to mention Stokely Carmichael. You're going to mention him and Lawrence Guillot. He's going to mention them too. Wow. And he ran the student government, as a matter of fact. He ran the student government for Howard University when I was there. Okay. And big old brain, just like a lot of those brothers and sisters at Howard University. They just got some big old brains, and you just admire them and just happy to be around them. Nikita Taifa was also how I started dealing with drug policy. I ended up becoming a lobbyist right after high school. Well, just before that, my last year of law school, Amnesty International, I forget who came and got me for that one, but they say, oh, we're fighting police officers out in Prince George's County. Nobody want to go out there because they were sicking dogs on people. They were sicking dogs on some of the Mexicans were out there, Mexican workers. The place was almost all Black, but the police department was still almost all white with the police chief. And so I kind of like, okay, we got to go after the police chief, and then once we took him down, and everything kind of fell down here. They got a Black police chief for the first time after that, and some other awesome things happened. But what we were doing during that with Amnesty, we were going all around Prince George's County, putting meetings together and say, were you harmed by the police? What happened? How did it happen? And so we would have all that stuff written down just so, you could build a case on what was going on. And ultimately, a consent decree was put on them for the work, because they were killing people out there left and right. It was just horrible, and it was really, really sad what was going on out there with some of the things that the cops are doing. So I became, right after that, I started working in an organization called Interfaith Action Communities, because I was kind of feeling like blackface, a white organization, blackface, when I was at Amnesty, right? So they had all the money to do everything I wanted to do, but I wanted to kind of go down deeper into see what's going on. So I ended up being the head of the police organizing for policing under Robert Clemenson, my good buddy, man, talented, big old fella, big brain, talented brother out there. There's a lot of them out there, and that DMV area is a lot of incredible black people out there. And so they put me on this. I was in the Interfaith Action Communities, and that was, say, like 80 churches. And so we got to do some awesome work, there. And then I left there, and Nikita came and got me again. Say they wanted to. They're looking at. They need a lobbyist, somebody to do a Measure 62 treatment versus incarceration for nonviolent drug offenders in Washington, D.C. They want to put up this initiative. They're going to put it on the ballot. I was working with Drug Policy Alliance, an incredible organization. Drug Policy Alliance brought me in, and they just let me go. Just let me go to work. And just organizing.
That's what Brother Kwame used to always say: organize. That's it.
Education. And Howard, I learned if you know how to fight, you know how to write.
There it is.
Organizing is everything, particularly once you understand coalition work. Hardest work in the world, but that's how you're going to get your victories and a lot faster. And you can take your enemies out very quickly when you deal with coalitions, because you ain't going to like everybody in your coalition. But don't fight each other in the foxhole. You can do all the debating and stuff once you get out of it. And then you end up learning different things about individuals when you're in the foxhole fighting together. Right?
Yeah, find common ground.
Right, you find common ground. That reminded me when I went out there after the Hurricane Katrina, and the brother with common ground was out there in Louisiana. I spent the night out there doing organizing.
Malik Rahim.
That's who it was.
Yeah. Matter of fact, I'm a contributor on his recently released book by James Tracy, A Southern Panther: Conversations with Malik Rahim. So I'm a contributor on in that.
Say that again.
Yes, it's a book on Malik Rahim by James Tracy. It's called Conversations with Malik Rahim, Southern Panther. So just look up Southern Panther: Conversations with Malik Rahim by James Tracy. I'm one of the contributors to the book. Definitely check that out.
The Malik I'm talking to right now is an incredible brother, and that brother was an incredible brother. I got to see him. I got to see them work. I drove in. I came in from. I think I was living in Portland. I was running the radio station at the time. I came in, and my homegirl Walida was there. We both teach at Portland State University. We teach there now, as a matter of fact. And Walida was on the ground over there. I came there and I saw her. And I was like, "What are you doing here?" And there was some white people. The Panthers. They gonna pull people in, right? And so the reason I came out there is because a buddy of mine named Sincere. He was in D.C. I heard him on a radio show. He was like, "Man, these white people out here, they're pulling guns on us. They're doing that, and people scared out here, because of the Katrina situation happened." I flew out there right away. If there's a fight, let's get in that fight right there. And so I was out there with Brother Malik, and that's why I got to learn a lot, about people really doing the work, and they were setting up food, this, and I learned, because if something incredible, a tragedy happened, somebody has to get in there and make it happen, and kind of balance everything out. Common Ground was doing that.
Right on.
And they're not bragging about it, doing it.
Okay, right on, man. Well, he's a good brother, and matter of fact, the 60th anniversary of the Black Panther Party is next year in Oakland, so I'll be attending that, possibly part of panel and tables and what have you. So I definitely would encourage you to come through.
We're gonna promote you. We want you to come on. We're gonna put you on the cover of the Florida Star. Florida Star's been around 71 years.
Yeah,
we're gonna put you. Well, it's been around since 1951. We're gonna put you on our radio show. We got a radio show called Impact. And anything that you're doing, we want to definitely support you. Because we know by the feedback. When you go on, or people like you go on, we know by the feedback. There are so many people, particularly the elderly people. They talk at length about being happy that people out here still doing the work. There are so many people that admire you you
Thank you, brother.
personally, that people admire you a
Well,
lot for the work you're doing.
well, I throw right back at you, brother. People admire you, and I appreciate all the opportunity you've given me as well.
Yes, sir.
And just keep doing it. And brother, I want to kind of transition to your creative side. Certainly, the activist side, the educational side has been phenomenal. But talk about your film documentaries, and especially the Betsy Coleman, because I've been to Chicago many times. I know about the Black aviation history there, and people like John C. Robinson, Cornelius Coffey, Willa Brown. So you're talking about some historical people, and talk about your documentaries, and especially the Betsy Coleman documentary you had.
Man, I love to hear people talk about those pilots that nobody talk about no more. That was 100 years ago. 100 years ago. Well, it was 100 years ago that Betsy Coleman in my hometown, Jacksonville, Florida, she fell to her death. It was 1926, April 30th. She was there for a big May Day event that Black people were putting on. If you don't know Jacksonville's history, 100 years ago, they had a Black Wall Street that had over 600 businesses. And then about 40 miles away, they had a Black beach called American Beach, created by Abraham Lincoln Lewis, who was over the pension bureau. They created a pension bureau that was a part of the Afro-American Life Insurance Company.
Wow, incredible.
Black Wall Street. Incredible. That was an economic-based income way of living that we were in, but they were not just capitalists. They used that. Abraham Lincoln Lewis, he felt that he had to make other people wealthy so he could stay wealthy, and so they could help their people in their community, because the humiliation that went on through segregation. There's a humiliation part of segregation that people don't talk about.
Right.
And so Abraham Lincoln Lewis was a part of making sure that insurance company, when the bank said no, and insurance companies say they can't cover you, and we don't have to throw our people out in the back somewhere, in a pine box somewhere, they took their insurance company and created dignity, respect, community, and wealth. They did all of these things, and they had their own sugar hill. I know y'all got a sugar hill over there in LA. They got a sugar hill up there in New York. We had a sugar hill that was all rich people, right?
Wow.
And so many people had these Black Wall Streets. We don't talk about the one. We only talk about the one in Tulsa because of the tragedy that happened there. Right, but there were a number of Black Wall Streets, and this economy, this business economy that they used to look out for the people, almost like a social organization.
Right.
It was amazing that type of balance they did with that.
Well, Atlanta was. Yeah, I was about to say Atlanta was kind of like that with Auburn Avenue and I think the insurance company that financed so many Black businesses where everything was so internal. Atlanta Life, I think it was called.
Atlanta Life Insurance Company.
Yeah. So I lived in Atlanta 26 years, and I kind of got to know the history, and it was amazing to see these enclaves of Black prosperity.
Y'all see how much this brother knows. Oh, you see how much this brother knows. So it started out in Durham, North Carolina. That's where the first insurance company was. That insurance company just went down, as a matter of fact. It started out in Durham, Atlanta Life, and there were 7 brothers that ultimately came together. I think the guy was named Merrick or something, but they started there, 7 brothers at a church, and they got it all together. Atlanta. The same thing. It was this barber, I forget what his name was, but he got with 7 brothers. They got there at church, and then they bought a small insurance company, made it for the church first, and then they offered it to everybody. With the insurance company, they gave them loans for their houses and loans for businesses, and did a whole bunch of other stuff for them through the insurance company, right? Well, they also had banks connected to it too. Right. And then at Jacksonville, Florida, same thing. 7 men came together in a church. That church was Bethel Baptist Church in Jacksonville, Florida. Abraham Lincoln Lewis was the only one of the men that didn't have a college degree, but he was a whiz at doing everything else, and married into a very wealthy family.
Right? Smart man.
And so his granddaughter is Dr. Janetta B. Cole, who ran Spelman.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh, wow.
her father was John Thomas Betch. He was the one that brought Bessie Coleman to Jacksonville. He was 26 years old. He had left Atlanta Life. Now he was in the big leagues over here in Jacksonville too now, with the Afro-American Life Insurance Company and helped create American Beach. He was the one that helped create it because he went from there learning what they were doing over there. He came into Jacksonville, married the richest Black woman there, which was the actually, that was the granddaughter of Abraham Lincoln Lewis. Dr. Janetta B. Cole is the great granddaughter of Abraham Lincoln Lewis. And so he came there, married the richest woman in town, which was the granddaughter of Abraham Lincoln Lewis. Her name was Mary Lewis, a very dutiful, beautiful woman. They got together. They were given a home in Sugar Hill. And if you think that John Betch, he came from the small town called Henderson, North Carolina, Vance County. They had a school that when you go, he comes from this little town and come into big Jacksonville and married a Richard. How's that? Right. If you go back and look at this brother's schooling, they had one of the elite educations in the country in the school called the Henderson Institute, ran by Dr. John Cotton. This is all be in this book, so I don't want to tell you about it. I get goosebumps when I talk about it because so much good information in this book that's going to be coming out when we talk about all this incredible story. But I don't want to do the professor thing and make everything a 50-minute answer.
Oh, that's all right.
I end up getting into Bessie Coleman because I was studying film. I was studying film in Portland, Oregon. And I was starting to write scripts, professionally, and I was putting them into the various competitions and so on. And I was doing films because we came up with this concept called polytainment, mixture of policy and politics with entertainment, so we can get information organizing to people that don't want to care about this information. They want to party, they want to do this, and so we found entertainment and very creative ways to shoot information into people, right? And so that was the polytainment, so when you hear if you look it up now, you see anything that's connected to polytainment, there's some serious side of it, but you see some entertainment connection and some creativity to it. And so that's and I thought there's nothing better than creating film and making documentaries. My first documentary was called Small City, Big Hip Hop. And that was about hip hop in Portland, Oregon. But we also talked about police brutality and how Kendra James got killed, how Jahar Perez got killed. And so we used that to do that. Then I did a film called Meth Around. That one kind of went viral. That was back when it was Google Videos back then. Some of you don't know Google Videos, something called Google Videos.
I remember. I remember.
I had hundreds of thousands of hits on that one. They ended up taking that one down, and I think YouTube bought Google Video. Okay. But that was a one, and then after that one, I did Turn Off Channel Zero, and that was with Professor Griff of Public Enemy. Oh, wow. We were fighting against negative Black media images. And then ultimately I was reading, and I saw this big old poster from 100 years ago, and it showed this Black woman in this airplane. And the poster said, The Flying Ace. And it was from 100 years ago during the silent film days. Wow. And I was like, oh, okay. So I'm reading about her in this book because I'm reading about film because I'm really trying to learn filmmaking, and I'm really trying to do it the right way, right? And so I read that about this 100 years ago, they created this film. It was a Black film, and I found out a white guy was doing it. It was the Norman Studios in Jacksonville, Florida. They did the Laurel and Hardy films. They did some of the first Black cowboy films. You just wouldn't know it, right? And this was LA ended up winning. Ended up doing a great job because of Jacksonville was actually the winter capital film of the movie industry. New York was the capital. Jacksonville, Florida was the winter capital of film industry. But Jacksonville was so racist, so ignorant, and the government was conservative government. They kicked the movie industry out. And guess who benefited? Los Angeles benefited. Some two white boys went out there and benefited. And I can't, we always say that in Jacksonville or LA because of us. They're so wonderful because
Because of Jacksonville. See, that's that Duval
because
power
these
right
racist
there.
white people kick the movie industry out, And so we do stuff like that. And so I found out when I was reading about her that she died in my hometown. I was like, what?
Yeah.
I never heard of this. And see, that's so much a part of, becoming conscious. When I read an autobiography of Malcolm X, I was mad because I grew up and I never heard of this. And then the reason I really started getting on the Bessie Coleman situation, because I'm from that hometown. She died at the Paxson Airfield. That's one of the top high schools in the country. But guess what? Today, I was doing a master's. I went back to the South after leaving Portland, Oregon. I went back to my hometown because my dad, there was a big old tragedy that happened that was on television where the big parking structure collapsed. And my dad was a part of that, some brothers that were a part of that. And a guy ended up dying. So I ended up going back to Jacksonville, Florida to live. This was 2008.
Okay.
And from there, I kind of plot myself down into there. They didn't allow me to teach. I was teaching at Portland State, but they wouldn't let me teach, unless I had a master. I already had a law degree. I already had a BA, but they wanted me to get another degree to teach. That's fine.
Another hoop to jump over. Right.
That's what I want to do anyway. And so I was turning all my papers into ebooks and making money online. So some of the books that you see online, they are research that I made from academic papers, made them a little bit more palatable to an average reader. And so when you hear the Controlling Blue about policing and the media, you hear I did a book on the Seminole Wars. Black people kicking butt in Florida. Read about the Second Seminole War. You want to read about Black people kicking butt? Read about the Seminole Wars. There are 3 of them. Read about them. The unconquered people. And so we got a little bit of chip on our shoulder when we're from Jacksonville, Florida. And a lot of us, we come out of the Gullah Geechee, the armed Black people, the natives and Blacks coming together. Black coming together and fighting and winning, So we got that mentality. And so when I remember first leaving out of Jacksonville, Florida, going to Georgia, hanging out with one of my buddies, and they were scared of white folks. I'm like, scared of white people? I kid you not. I was buying some batteries. The batteries cost $99, right? This is 88. And I gave the lady $1. This is in Georgia, some small town in Georgia. And she charged me $125. I was like, $125? What? I was like, lady, you better listen to me. One of the guys picked me up off my feet and threw me in the car, grabbed me out of the store and basically threw me in the car. They said, man, they'll kill you out here.
Oh, wow.
It was like that.
Oh, my goodness.
And so that's ultimately how I ultimately did. I was doing a master's. One of my papers at a history teacher. She was a white lady. I asked her if I could do an independent on Bessie Coleman. She told me no. The brother who went to college at UCLA, who was one of my professors, he said yes. And so he was teaching public administration. Oh my goodness, what is his name? But he was teaching public administration. He said yes. And so my research was how Black women were treated 100 years ago, using the life in public administration by the governments, what from state, national, and local governments. And I used the life of Bessie Coleman to do it. Oh man, that was awesome. Wow. I ended up.
Now, what I was just going to say about Bessie Coleman, the people I mentioned, John C. Robinson, who actually was Ethiopia's lone defense pilot during the Italian siege on Ethiopia, but she inspired so many of these Black aviation people, and some of which went down to become Tuskegee Airmen. So you could not have covered a race woman, a beautiful race woman, and innovative person than Bessie Coleman, brother.
Right. Yeah. So let me talk a little bit about Bessie Coleman, coming from this small little town of Waxahachie, ultimately moving to another small town, Atlanta, Texas, and this was right outside of Dallas area, right? her father was a native. Her mother was black from Georgia, and his father was Choctaw. And they had like 13 kids.
Okay.
And Bessie was one of the youngest, and her mom said Bessie was the craziest. She was a genius. She was a genius
Okay.
kid at a very young age. They would take her to the store to make sure that they got the proper change. And so while other kids had to do, the cleaning up, they had Bessie sitting around making sure that she knew what was, and this, I'm talking about 6, 7, 8 years old, making sure that people giving the right change when they're picking cotton, doing that. But their dad ended up leaving the family because of how racist it was and moved and went to Oklahoma. Right. And so they've always had this connection, the Bessie Coleman family, with Oklahoma. A lot of them, they still live in Oklahoma to this day. But she left and went to Langston Normal School. She ended up failing out of there because she didn't have enough money. It ain't because she didn't know enough, because a lot of the schools back then only went up to the 8th grade.
Right.
And so she ended up coming back home. When she came back home, there was the band followed her, and there was this big old parade and all this. And so this is how incredible she was. She ended up leaving there, and with the big old mass migration, went up to Chicago, where she was the #1 manicurist. She had the fastest manicurist. She worked in a shop where all the people that were playing baseball and all the wealthy black people would come, and she would basically do all of their nails and stuff like that, right? And she ran into this rich guy named Benga. She ran into a lot of the sports players, but she also ran into one very important person. That was Robert Abbott, who was over
Chicago Defender.
Chicago Defender newspaper. Yes, sir.
Yes.
They paid for her. So her brother was talking crap. She has a brother that worked for one of the crime bosses in the area. He was in the while she was doing manicures, and the people in there, he's in there talking crap, right? Saying that these French women, because they came out of World War I, where the black soldiers were fought under the French command, because the U.S. government so racist that black soldiers couldn't fight under the U.S. command. So in World War I, they fought under the French command, and all the band of jazz and all that stuff, they went crazy. That was under the French command. And so he came back home, and they was in Chicago, and he was in there talking crap. He said, these white women over there in France are better than y'all. They flying airplanes. Look at y'all doing.
Wow.
And Bessie Coleman said, you just called it for me.
Yes.
Right? She didn't like that. And so with just one of her older brothers that she was living with, she went on this thing about flying in an airplane.
Right.
And she ended up getting Benga, as well as Robert Abbott. They paid for her to have French lessons. First, she had to learn French, because she couldn't get no lessons here in the United States, because she's black and a woman, right? So she got to learn French. Then she went over to France, and she was in one of the top flight schools in that country over there. I kid you not. There was during the time she was over there was a flight that happened where a pilot went down, the teacher and a student went down. Almost everybody left the class. Bessie Coleman stayed. The next morning, Bessie Coleman was still there, when almost all the men and everybody, and she was the only female in the whole class and the only black in the class.
Wow.
And so when she got that license back in 1921, she was the only one. She was the only black woman to get a license. She was, a matter of fact, she was the only woman to receive an international pilot's license, black or white. It was Amelia Earhart came 2 years after Bessie Coleman, and adored Bessie Coleman. As a matter of fact, when I did this, did the study, and the front page of all of the newspapers in Florida. The Florida Star. That was before I was at the Florida Star. The Free Press. It was another black paper at the time. I think we called it Advocate. And then the big white paper, the Times Union. They put all that on the cover, and they took me out there and out to the Paxson Airfield. Right now, if you go to the Jacksonville Airport, there's now something about Bessie Coleman there. You go to the Paxson High School, you walk in the front of the school. When you go in the door, you're going to see a plaque there. That's a picture I think you got of me. That's the plaque. The plaque is right there. And then there was a big a memorial that's in front of that school that they put up there later. And then they gave me this this thing at the city council about recognizing her life, and I didn't know anything about her. And right now, more and more people know about her because of people like us that put her story out there. And this is a woman, when she died, you're right, Cuffy, Willa, all of these people, they admired her. The Tuskegee Airmen School that was put in Tuskegee, that's a Bessie Coleman school. There's, of course, they got there was a Robbins Airport that was over there
Chicago, in the Illinois.
That's because of Bessie Coleman.
Right.
I think they have a street that go out to their they got a road that goes out into their rent a car thing. That's a Bessie Coleman street. And but Bessie Coleman was in different places, like the opening of Palomar Park airfield. There was a Palomar Park airfield out in California. She went out there and they had her come out to open up that airfield. Well, she went 300 feet up in the air and came down and crashed and broke ribs and bones and everything. People thought that she was not going to fly again. This happened right out there in California, Southern California.
Wow.
And that day, when she came through, a crowd of people was still out there. She was still trying to go and fly. When she came through, broken bones and everything, she was still trying. People said, "Please, Bessie, don't." And the doctor had to stop her from going out there. You know, and these planes, these were wooden planes at the time. Put it this way, the stick shift. A lot of people don't remember stick shift. These young kids don't remember.
Yeah, I remember.
But they had a stick shift, a rudder or whatever it was. It looks like a big old bat. It looked like a bat, upside down bat. You know, that you had to, and they sitting in a chair.
Wow. Wow.
They sitting in a chair. These planes were falling out the air, left and right. People were getting killed. And she would be one of those ones that because she couldn't get a job when she got back here with these pilot license, and she was famous and all that, received these awards and was on cover of the papers. And when she showed up to these air shows, she would have on these incredible outfits. The newspapers, black and white, talk about how beautiful she was, and she would do some of the most incredible stunts. And she had some haters too.
Of course. Man.
One of the stunts she would do is a free fall where the plane would look like it was about to hit the ground, and they would cut the motor off, turn it back on. You know how risky that is at a wooden plane, a wooden surplus plane that was an old plane, because the whites had the awesome planes, and the blacks had to go try to rustle up money to get the surplus planes, you know, and that were old World War I planes, you know, and that ultimately became her undoing because of one of those planes that went down in Jacksonville, April 30th, 1926. But there was a man that went into history and that was talked about like crazy, and that was John Thomas Betch. And that's who the last year and a half, well, it's been last 13 years, I've been thinking about his life, because he was this young kid. He was this young guy in his 20s, and he brought her out here. The Negro Welfare League, Abraham Lincoln Lewis was a part of this whole thing. He was like the chair of the board. And there was this woman, I forget what her name is, but he came in town for her organization. It was the Negro Welfare League, and man, to see her fall out of that plane like that, I got to say this lady's name, Clara White.
Okay.
Whoa.
Okay. All right.
I couldn't get off this interview without mentioning that. The Clara White mission.
Okay.
But they had these various organizations, and ultimately, man, it was such a tragedy. And I wonder about him my whole life. I wondered about him. And so you can imagine when I found out that he was Janetta B. Cole's father, because I kept saying Betch. Years ago, Betch. And then I'm like, it's a Janetta, that's Johnetta Betch, isn't it Betch Cole? I'm like, is that her grandfather? And to come to find out that was her dad. And he was just as incredible as her. He was just, and nobody knows who he is. And so this is what my next book is going to be about. And I haven't talked about this to anybody except you and on your show, because of the honor that I feel and the excitement, and that you want to learn about Bessie Coleman, you know. But what a wonderful woman she was. Let me
Oh,
mention
sure.
Ethiopia real
Okay. All
quick.
right. Sure.
Another guy I always thought about after this was the Black Eagle. This guy,
Okay.
Julian. Everything you read about Julian, the Black Eagle, 100 years ago, is funny.
Okay.
I kid you not. Read about him. This guy, he was a part of the
Okay.
Marcus Garvey movement. Marcus Garvey named him the Black Eagle.
Okay.
He was the guy that he said he flew for the Canadians. He said he flew for the Europeans, and
Right.
nobody could find all these records. He went over to Ethiopia. He went to Ethiopia. They had 2 airplanes or something like that.
Yeah.
He took up one airplane, crashed it into the other airplane.
Oh wow. Oh my
He had
goodness.
to leave. He had to run out of town when he got to the United States. The best
Wow.
dressed man you ever seen in your life, very handsome,
Okay.
was young
Okay.
at the time. And so the white media, they got him on camera. So did you leave out? He's like, no, I wasn't. I didn't leave out of town. I left on my own. They might run me out of town. And so anytime you see him in the media, he's always explaining himself about something.
Okay.
Like,
All right.
he would get lost. They would fly these planes and he would get lost. And then when
Right.
they find him, he's an arms dealer. This guy dabbling almost everything. He's
Okay.
super pro-black. But then when they
Okay.
find him, he's on the beach with some white women, chilling, having a good time.
Okay.
He turned down
Wow.
nothing. He was one of those guys that
Okay.
the undertakers, when they go out to these meets, he would hate on Bessie Coleman a little bit. Well, yeah, they said she was the first, but really I'm the first. He was kind of like
Right.
that,
Oh,
you know.
okay. Right. I got you.
But these undertakers would follow him like buzzards, asking for the rights to show his body once he died.
Wow.
Every week they did him like that. So he was the other person I thought about other than John Batch. But John Batch, when I found out the life of him, and he helped to create the Black Wall Street and all these other things, and his wife was, and she created this big building that's still there to this day. It was AME building in Jacksonville right now.
Okay.
It was, very wealthy, beautiful building, still there right now. And to find out about that his kids, one is a famous jazz drummer, John Betch Sr. Now he lives in Jacksonville. He was in Europe. He had a daughter that a lot of people don't know about. We call her the beach lady in Jacksonville, Marlene Betch. She's the reason that American Beach was saved. If you go out to American Beach, there's a A.L. Lewis Museum. This is at Fernandina Beach. If you there's a museum, and you still have you have markers and stuff, and still these homes that these Black people built up when it was an all-Black beach, egalitarian. It wasn't that the wealthy people own beach property. Abraham Lincoln Lewis made it to where the maid all the way to the paid can have a beachfront property right there. And I read in the book, it was the first egalitarian resort in the United States, and that was American Beach. Just awesome stuff, man. It's a lot of history.
Well, brother, I want to definitely see where can people go to not only get your documentaries or look at your documentaries, but also your books, just to make sure we got about two more questions to go. 2 or 3.
Oh, yes, sir. Yeah, you can always go up on do broad searches, and I got one book called about the Seminole Wars. Okay. I kind of put it in the context of a huge slave rebellion. Okay. Also, the Controlling Blue, that deals with policing. That's some really good information in there. If you're a Black cop, you really want to look at that information. Okay. And if you are somebody that's been fighting against police brutality, look at that book. It's going to give you a lot of really, really good information on how you can start up here and win some good battles. Bessie Coleman, Flying the Blues, all of that, they're up on Amazon. They've been up there for a long time. You can always just broad search Google and find out a lot of stuff I'm doing. I'm up on Facebook and Instagram and just always doing, something to, try to figure out ways for us to be able to win, and make some awesome things happen for our people. And all my activism really is about children. In my mind, I think about how is this going to help children? How is this going to help that child grow up, and now they got what they need so they can continue on, evolution of our struggle. And I don't get any of this. I look at myself as being on the backs of the Panthers, being on the backs of a SNCC, all those people that have come before us. I don't believe that we throw that away. I'd say we build on that, because they won, whether we want to admit it or not, those people won victories. A lot of incredible victories, and if you feel like they haven't won the victory, then you got some more reading to do.
Okay, all right. And speaking of that, give a little history of the Florida Star newspaper because it's very historical.
Yeah, so the Florida Star newspaper came about. There was a axe handle Sunday that happened where these white folks came out, and you had these organizers, these young organizers. They were doing the work during the civil rights movement, and these white folks came out with these axe handles and just start beating the civil rights people in Jacksonville. In Jacksonville, we one of those places you ain't gonna hear a whole lot about black people losing nothing and getting beat. And so they had this called Boomerang Gang, and it was like one or two other gangs that came over there and that was around. And these white folks, they thought the Boomerang Gang, were, some of these civil rights workers. Well, big mistake. So they got their ass beat,
Okay,
the Panthers and down in Jacksonville, we grew up always hearing about the Panthers kick the Ku Klux Klan's butt at the courthouse. We grew up, always hearing about that. But out of a lot of this stuff came a newspaper. And I'm talking about the 50s. And this was before the Accidental Saturday stuff. But that was the paper that talked about it. And before that, we had the Pittsburgh Courier in town. We had some of the other papers because Jackson's a big city. The Chicago Defender, Robert Abbott, was in town when in Jacksonville, when Bessie Coleman died. He was in town.
Wow.
He was telling her that white guy mechanic that ultimately was flying the plane when Bessie Coleman fell out of the plane. Right. It was a white guy that was flying it, William Wills. Robert Abbott was in town, told him, don't trust him. Don't trust him. Right. And so Robert Abbott also had a very good friend that lived in Jacksonville, and so Jacksonville was one of the three cities that was booming. Back then, if you read the history, you read all the way out in LA, that was awesome stuff going on. Right. Oakland, that was awesome stuff going on. Chicago, New York, Jacksonville.
Wow.
Chicago, New York, Jacksonville. Every time you read something, Chicago, New York, Jacksonville, Florida. And then Jacksonville ended up, it's just an incredible city right now. But, the conservative government and dumb white folks, the reason that in Jacksonville, we just keep, we'll go a few steps forward and a few steps backwards as a result of dumb white folks that lived in the surrounding town that come into the town. And ultimately, they had a consolidation where blacks were the majority of the town. They connected all these other little cities and municipalities and then various things. And ultimately, blacks become the 30% instead of 60%. And so that's some of the stuff that we fight. But the Florida Star newspaper came about.
Yeah, go ahead.
Florida Star newspaper came about as a result of that.
Oh, yes.
I don't know if you can see that.
Because I do follow it online as well.
Yes, sir. The Florida Star newspaper came about, and let's see what this one is. About around 1951, there was a guy by the name of Simpson that created it. And then Clara McLaughlin was the one that bought it and took it over. Clara McLaughlin was the first black woman to own a TV station. She talked about how John Wayne was nasty towards her, was looking at her breasts. And she said how she told Ted Turner at a table when they was talking about hiring her. She was like, no. She sent him a note and it says OWN, own. She want to own. She don't want to work for nobody. That's Clara McLaughlin, the incredible woman. But she bought the paper and she come out of Howard University. She was the reason that Howard has a journalism. She created the journalism major at Howard University back in the 60s. And she brought me in. I remember doing an interview when I first came back. I was the head of the SCLC. We were changing the name of a school from Nathan Bedford Forest to ultimately became Westside High. And I had just gotten to town not too long before that, and she had me on the radio, and I was just so nervous because I knew I had known her history, and she was running the newspaper. She had a Georgia Star newspaper as well. It's the Florida Star that she had, and then the Impact radio show that goes on to this day. But that paper was a paper that speaks truth to power. We always got something about Africa in the paper before people started talking about Burkina Faso. The brother, the president over there, Ibrahim. We've been talking about that already before, and then we just put just a whole lot of incredible information in there that people need, and we really look out for the elderly people with this newspaper as well.
Okay, and how can they follow online? What's the how do you get online with the newspaper?
Yeah, the newspaper is the Florida Star, thefloridastar.com. And then we can send it to you every week for a very small fee online, or you can get it, in the mail. We send out hundreds of papers all around the country. And people love the paper because, it's a lot of sacrifice when you decide that you're going to stand up as a regular paper, and you're going to stand up and you're going to make it happen. You're going to tell it like it is. We're called they consider us the most factual paper in Jacksonville. That's what they consider it, whether they like it or not. And there's some people that don't love us because of the stuff that we put in there, but that's what media is about. It's about making sure that we educate the people and they're getting the information.
Well, brother, well said. As we conclude, man, what are some of your future projects, and how can people support you?
Oh man, I got this book I got coming out on John Batch, A Prince of Black Wall Street. We're shopping that right now to some of the big houses, because this book is an incredible history. Took some really, really good research and put it in there, and it's some information that once you get it, there are some other things that you're going to be able to do in your town. And I always do that to all my books, kind of put information in there that you can actually use, right? But that's my main project that I'm working on. I've been working on is that I'm still teaching. I teach a class at Portland State University called Black Business Experience that was created by Dr. Ethan Johnson and Walida. I just helped put it together, and we talk about Black Wall Street, we talk about Tulsa, we talk about all of the Black millionaires that were around, and how they did it, male and female. We talk about the sisters that gave money to John Brown, and it just so many awesome things that, about fortune in our community, and how when Black people have fortune, how they have helped, and looked out for more than just themselves, back 100 years ago. Today, we get a little wealth now, and we want to corner ourselves off and still try to make other people wealthy. Abraham Lincoln Lewis, they knew they had to make other people wealthy, and they didn't just make a few people wealthy. I'm talking about hundreds of people wealthy in just one area. That's what we have to get back to. And I think people who are going through courts and seeing how the government used the system to embarrass you and to harm you, I think they're able to kind of see, once you're the wealthy people, and hopefully they begin to see that there are people that you have to go grab out there that are not scared of people out there, and you have to support them, and they might not be about money. They might be actually about making something real happen. But I'm gonna tell people, don't ever shun money, because that's a tool that has some energy that you can pull in some people that will never come in, and then you can educate them. Once you educate them, boy, the sky's the limit. I got that from Fred Hampton.
Okay. Right on. Well, they say, break down the word education, educare, that's to draw out of you what's already in you, right?
That's it. Education comes out of you, right? Education. And I tell my students that. I said, information goes into you. You could tell how educated somebody is by what comes out of them, right?
Exactly. Yes.
There it is.
Absolutely. And brother,
but that's also famous as being good. I do my children like that. Your goodness is going to come from the inside. So when we talking to our children and we looking out for our children, we trying to make sure they go to that next level. Talk to them about being good from the inside of themselves out.
Right on, brother. And how can people contact you and follow you on social media as we conclude?
Yeah, this is Opio Sokoni, and you'll see everything will pop up there. You'll see a number of the different projects that I've gone through. If you do a broad search, some of us been out here, like brother Malik Ismail. Some of us been out here a long time doing just some awesome, incredible work. And I never did want to do the work that was going to, or wanted to be the type of activist where, I seem like I'm not having a good time, or I'm scared. When I was at law school, I was writing about the Black Liberation Army. They said, oh, no, you can't write about them. No, we are going to write about them. Those are our heroes. And we're not going to be scared about people who are underground. And we organized a trip, the first trip to Cuba. I went out there and took 60-something people to Cuba. That was Howard University's first one. And that was a result of me coming out of Trans-Africa Forum. They had just got back from Cuba. They had this, they was all over these newspapers and Ebony magazine. I went in there, Randall Robinson had me do a layout of how they went, what they did when they were there, and everything. And through that, I learned how to go through the Office of Foreign Assets Control and all that kind of stuff. And then I was in law school at the time. I said, why don't we do our senior trip to Cuba? And they were looking like, what are we talking about? What are we talking about? But before I said that to the entire class, I had already talked to a couple of my buddies. Hey, why don't we go to Cuba? You know, kind of did my little organizing first. And so we ended up going to Cuba, you know, for our last year. And we got to see Asada Shakur. Best moment of my life. Best moment of my life. And I got to hug her, got to kiss her, and, you know, got to get to tell any entity that, you know, you want to fight, you know, mess with her. Yeah. You know, and we're only here to sacrifice anyway, you know, because of what people have gone before us have done. You know, their sacrifice, you know, we always willing to sacrifice all the way up to death. So we're never going to be afraid of those big entities. We're never going to be afraid of, because we got the knowledge and we don't mind actually being active.
Right on, brother. And again, I want to thank you for coming on. It's been a long time coming, brother. I'm honored by you. Keep doing what you're doing, brother. You have my support. And again, just keep them coming, brother, because our people need it.
Thank you. And you keep doing what you're doing. And anytime we can support you, we're going to do that, sir.
All right. Thank you, brother. You have a good one, and best to the family as well, brother.
Thank you, sir. You too.
You too, brother. Take care. Right on. And we're going to probably be back on July 27th for an interview, and looking forward to speaking to our next guest. Powerful brother we just spoke to, but definitely am excited and about his future and what he's doing. So take care, and see you later.